Good evening. We call to order the regular meeting of the West Valley City Council. We note that we have all council members present this evening. We note that we are starting just a couple of minutes late as our previous study meeting went a little longer than we had planned. With that, we will turn to our opening ceremony. Councilman Tom Hyun for the opening ceremony.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. I would like to invite all of you to stand up and do the pledge of allegiance with us. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, any special recognitions. I saw a scout troop here earlier, but I think they didn't stay. And it looks like everyone's here just on our agenda. With that, then, we'll go to our approval of our minutes of November 10th to the council and for the minutes.
Mayor, move for approval of the minutes of November 10th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as they are. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll place that for vote. All in favor of approving the minutes of November 10th, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes unanimously. The minutes are approved. Next, we go to our award ceremonies and proclamations. We have a proclamation declaring November 28th of this year as Small Business Saturday in West Valley City. I believe that Councilman Mueller has that to read.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas West Valley City celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 27.9 million small businesses in the United States. They represent more than 99.7% of American employer firms, create more than 2/3 of the net new jobs, and generate 46% of private gross domestic product, as well as 54% of all U.S. sales. And whereas the U.S. Small Business Administration defines a small business as 250 employees or less, and whereas West Valley City has approximately 2,850 total businesses and approximately 1,500 or 52% of those are small businesses. And whereas West Valley City's small businesses employ approximately 28,000 employees, which is approximately 43% of total employees in the city. And whereas small businesses employ over 55% of the working population in the United States. And whereas 89% of consumers in the United States agree that small businesses contribute positively to the local community by supplying jobs and generating tax revenue. And whereas 87% of consumers in the United States agree that small businesses are critical to the overall economic health of the United States, and whereas 93% of consumers in the United States agree that it is important for people to support the small businesses that they value in their community, and whereas West Valley City supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods, and whereas advocacy groups as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday, now therefore, we, the Mayor and the City Council of West Valley City, do hereby proclaim November 28, 2015 as Small Business Saturday in West Valley City, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year.
Thank you very much. With that, then, we go to our comment period. Because I believe we have a number of people who want to speak tonight, we would remind you that when you speak, and there's no debating. It's not a contest, a debate society. You have your 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, that you can use for your comments. And then we do set aside up to a maximum of a half hour for comments, so I don't think we'll hit that if there are only 5 that speak. With that then, we will start, and we'll begin with Richard Spencer Valentine. If you would come forward, state your name and address, and then we'll go from there. We'll go through these that have signed up.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm Richard Spencer Valentine with the Salt County Health Department, and I thought I'd stop by tonight to supply you a couple of some copies of some declarations that have been recently issued by the governor. November is Alternative Fuels Awareness Month, so we'd like to encourage the city to be aware of alternative fuels and encourage their use wherever possible. Many of them provide a significant reduction to air pollution. And the other declaration is one that was signed earlier in the year, and Mayor Bigelow is one of the ones that signed it, as well as Mayor McAdams, declaring that September was idle-free month, and also the whole season is idle-free season. Particularly as we're getting close to the inversion season, this can provide a significant help in reducing pollution, and so we encourage the city to do what they can to promote that. I've got a whole big stack of these Turn Your Key, Be Idle-Free stickers. I want to consider putting them on county vehicles or making them available for residents to put on their own vehicles. So I will just leave these over here.
All right, thank you very much. Next we have, it's actually two people, Ellen and Daryl Hanson. Do you both want to speak? If so, why just one of you come up and
Hi,
the next one.
Ellen Hanson, and I own D. Hanson Auto Wrecking in the area that you have open for vote tonight. And I wanted to thank you, Ms. Lang, for your concern and your questions. I have a couple of questions for you. One of them is concerning the moratorium and the de-zoning, the down-zoning of the area out there in the wrecking yards. The moratorium is something that we've already seen in the area. So the question I have is, why, what are you going to accomplish with it, and how is it tied in with the downzoning? Because I understand that it is a manufacturing. Now you want light manufacturing, so that's a downzoning. Does it drop the property value of the area? Does it make it so that, you know, if the 6-month moratorium runs out, that you're going to line them up and just keep, you know, one moratorium after another until you decide what you want to do with the land? What is exactly your plans for the area? I know it doesn't affect the current use of the property that's out there now. You know, we can go ahead and keep being a wrecking yard or whatever, but when you decide to take the land by condemning it and giving us just compensation for it, what exactly are your plans for that area? And why is downzoning it and moratoriums? You know, why are you doing it?
Okay, thank you. And next, Daryl Hanson.
No, he's with
No.
me.
Oh, you're okay?
You said it.
Then Joe Herrera.
Thanks for listening to me today. I'm Joe Herrera with the Highbury community. So I'm just here to address just some of my concerns about the vacant land that's in the Highbury community there. So I've kind of gone over, you know, the city's proposal for that land, and also Ivory Homes has met with the community to kind of tell us what they're thinking about that. I'm also a real licensed realtor, so I've kind of gone over the numbers as far as the resale value, what houses with the cities, with what the city's thinking they want to do with the land and the houses they want to build, because they want to build a lot bigger houses, and I understand that. And from what I've seen and all the research I've done, prices would be between $500,000 and $700,000, which the area really doesn't support. I've ran comparables. There's only been one home that has sold over $500,000 in all of West Valley in the past year. So really, the houses that the city, what the city wants to do with those, the houses that were to be built, they wouldn't be appraised, and really a lender wouldn't lend on them. And a buyer would probably have to come with tens, and if not hundreds of thousands of dollars if they went with the city's proposal. So what I'm asking is for you guys to hear out Ivory Homes' proposal and any other builders that want to propose on that. There will be an increase. There will be larger lot sizes, larger home sizes, but I think it'll be able to, the comparables will match up to that, and it will be an increase for West Valley, but there'll be comparables to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Matthew T. Slade.
Mayor, City Council, and City Manager, and then all the other city representatives, appreciate you being here tonight. I am here tonight, you probably all already know, you've received emails from me, but it is regarding the future development of Highbury. I wanted to talk about the use of land and how it appreciates in value. On the eastern side of this valley, the reason why homes on that side of the valley have a higher value is because there's less land. We know that land is limited. It's a limited supply. And when you have a limited supply, that goes with supply and demand. Out in our area, we currently don't have a limited supply of land out in Highbury, because what's zoned for residential is about 89.7 acres. And so when you have a large supply of land like that just sitting vacant, it's not going to appreciate the value of the homes out there very quickly. Okay? I understand that it's not the infrastructure that appreciates in value, it's the land. And so my hope is that the city will continue working on the current ordinances for the area and continue working with, whether it be Ivory Homes or another developer, but that we make sure that these homes that are going to be built in the area are going to be marketable, are going to be homes that people are going to be able to afford out here. Like Mr. Herrera was stating, when a government agency comes in or an appraiser comes in to appraise a home, he's going to base it off the comps. What's the average house, well, what's the price of home selling in the area, and what price are homes selling in that area with this amount of square footage? And if we can't show comps, then people won't be able to purchase those homes in the first place, because I don't know how many people can come to the table with hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to finance the rest of their house. And that's not very appealing either, because people want to, if they're coming down with all this money, they want to have equity in their home. And so I think that the plan that was presented to the community of Highbury by Ivory Homes on October 14th was trying to meet the city the best they can. You know, they are a business and they do need to also be able to make a profit. But I do appreciate the city pushing back and saying, hey, come on guys, you guys can present something a little bit better, because they have the plans improved over time. Now they're willing to increase the average Rambler size to 1,600 square feet above ground and the average two-story 1,800 square feet above ground. And before that, the past homes that were built in Highbury, they just had to be 1,300 square feet above the ground in order to meet the ordinances at that time. And so there is an increase in home size. And they're meeting the city on the 12,500 square foot average lot size. And so Joe and I have spoken to many people in our community. Obviously it's a political thing, not everyone agrees, but many people we have spoken to do believe that the plan that Ivory's presented would appreciate the value of our neighborhood.
1 minute left.
Thank you, Mayor. So what we are hoping, and like I said, I can't say everybody because there is opposition, which Mr. Pyle, I'm sure, has seen on our Facebook page. But what I am proposing is that we still meet with Ivory Homes, but also reach out to other developers and see home builders and see if what they are willing to bring to the table. And if you've already done that, thank you so much. But just keep in mind that what appreciates the land the quickest is when you have limited land, not when you have a supply of land. And the more we can decrease the supply of land out there, that's how we're going to appreciate the values of our homes sooner than later. And then one last thing, I probably have 20 seconds. The school, my family and I moved out there. One of the main reasons is because there was possibly going to be a STEM junior high. And we're worried that that's not going to happen. So we hope to keep fighting that with Granite School District and get a STEM junior high out in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Roman Garlov.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for coming out here tonight. I represent GVI Auto Works out on 5600 West. A couple of questions that I have is, do we have like some sort of a packet or an area where we can go online and review, what are the guidelines and regulations for the temporary land use? And then the other thing, is there a better way to inform a lot of the landowners of the meetings that are going to be, in the future or coming up? Because I wasn't aware that there was a meeting until one of the landowners called me up and said, hey, there's actually a meeting for the land and zoning and dezoning and stuff like that. So I wanted to see if there's a better form of communication between city and landowners that can be established. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all that had signed up to speak. I assume that's everyone in our public comment period. Okay. Looks like we're done with that part. Then next, we go to our city manager for any comments.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just make a couple of quick, hopefully just clarifying or instructional comments. First to the question about the couple of questions about the salvage yard moratorium that's being proposed for this evening. If the council would desire, we have maps and further information, of course, all the same information that was presented last week by Mr. Pastor, who would be available to answer any of those questions about intent to expand the boundaries of the area being examined, like the council talked about last week, or length of moratorium, or acquisition of property, all those sorts of things, so that he can do that. Also just wanted to make a comment for the general record, and appreciate Mr. Slade, Mr. Herrera being here. So this isn't new information to you, but I just thought in terms of getting it out there for the public. So Ivory has come in and met with us about their idea and what they would like to see for a proposal in terms of acquiring the land from the owner and then developing. And their proposal or idea doesn't meet the current standards, as you know, from an ordinance standpoint. But we will continue to work with Ivory. At the last time that I had conversation with Mr. Cambrulis, for example, what he was looking at and what the city's ordinance requirements are really don't meet from a time frame standpoint of what he was looking at. So we talked about resuming that conversation again, probably in the late winter or spring next year in any event. So I only bring that up from the standpoint of making sure that everybody knows that, yes, we've had a long standing and a good relationship with Ivory. They're a good builder here in the city, and we look at having that relationship to continue. We also do, as a good point was brought up from a question standpoint of what do we do with other developers? Are there other developers or builders who would be willing to look at this particular parcel? In the general sense, just wanted to make sure that I put out there that we do talk to other developers as well on a continual basis. So nothing's been shut off from a conversation standpoint, nor would it ever be. Yes, there is a mismatch in terms of what the ordinance requires from building standards, both in size and building materials standpoint right now, and likely to continue, but that doesn't mean conversation and proposals can't change over time, so we'll continue those conversations.
Thank you. To the council, for any comments? Not seen any. I think I would just make the following comment. We appreciate those who do come and share their thoughts. We do not often get a lot of people at council meetings, and this is really the way it's supposed to work, where there's an opportunity for citizens to come and share their comments, not in a debate, but in a very professional way, and with the opportunity to share concerns. And those concerns are very real. And I know, I cannot speak for the rest of the council, but I know I very much appreciate those comments, and they make me think about what we're doing and to give it additional thought and concern before we take action. So at least that's for me. I'm very appreciative of those of you who have come here. And although not all of you have spoken, I assume that many of you are here on these same issues. Because we usually just don't get drop-ins just wondering if there's any free food here or something. So we appreciate you. Thank you all for coming. With that, we continue on our agenda. We are on item 8, ordinances. Ordinance 15-37 to enact a temporary land use regulation applicable to all land use applications for property located between 5600 West and 5800 West from 2200 South to 2400 South. This request has come from the city. Down here too. And it is an ordinance that would be in effect for 6 months to allow the city to prepare and study any changes to zoning for the area with respect to the current general plan and the proposed general plan update that will be considered by the council. And so there are some issues there. We have not heard any detail on that yet, but this will put in place a moratorium. It does not change any zoning. Current zoning stays in effect. Property owners can still sell their property. It would, it doesn't affect anything there. It's if they want to change any use on that property, either through zoning or conditional use or anything like that, that's held in abeyance for 6 months to see what happens and what proposal comes from this study. And so, have I characterized that correctly? Mr. Pyle, anything you want to add to that to clarify?
Yes, I think you did a pretty good job there, Mayor. It's not intended to change anything until further consideration. For example, one of the questions was made, would I be notified or would I know about changes to the land? You absolutely would. If a zoning change were to be made, for example, that would be a matter that would be noticed by letter. Conversations would already be being had anyway. It would go to planning commission. There would be a time frame, all that sort of thing. So,
and that is one of the possible outcomes. We don't know what the outcome will be for sure, but that will be looked at as a possibility, and certainly everyone will be notified as required by state law. Property owners affected will be notified of those meetings. Thank you. So with that introduction then, we'll come to the council for any comments or action.
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment and clarification. Thank you. Also, the suggestion was made possibly that the city is looking at condemning some of this property. And as far as I know, there's no contemplation of condemning any of this property. Is that right?
That's correct.
Could we maybe pull up the map that shows what's the proposal and then the alternative map?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Jake?
Now that'll take just a moment to get those down and the projector to warm up. Do you want to keep talking during that, or do you want to wait for the map?
I'm concerned with all of the property owners, thinking that what are we up to? We're up to studying this, and the moratorium, as I understand it, we cannot extend the moratorium past 6 months. It's up to 6 months, may not be 6 months, but then it goes away. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It would end at 6 months. We don't have any intention to extend it beyond 6 months. And in fact, if other action were to take place, either in the negative, we decided there wasn't really anything that looked like it was going to change anyway, or if we came to some other conclusion from a change interest, it might actually be shorter than 6 months.
And if we were to decide that a different zoning would be more appropriate, that would, like you said, be noticed up.
Yep.
It would go through planning commission, people could speak there, would come back to the city council, everybody would get a letter, they could speak here again.
Yep.
This isn't any kind of underhanded, unless we, someday we'll let you know if we change the zoning or something like that. It's just for study purposes. So, Mr. Crowell, I think what's in the dotted line is the original proposal. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And I believe that was 70 acres, if I remember correctly, 70 or 77 acres, the original.
The blue shaded property is owned by UDOT.
Yes,
And the red is the Rocky Mountain Power property.
correct.
And then could we see the other map? Oh, that's it? Oh, that's
It.
expanded. And that was the suggestion that any contiguous heavy manufacturing or manufacturing zoning property ought to be probably perhaps included as part of the moratorium as well.
Yes, sir.
So that expands it, perhaps doubles it.
What's the number?
The 77 that you quoted, sir, is the expanded number.
That's the expanded
The first
number.
number is just slightly above 40.
Okay, thank you.
So it's approximately just under double.
Yes.
And I think part of the reason we wanted to include that is we wanted to make sure that UDOT was kind of held to the same standard as the surrounding property owners as far as the moratorium goes, that they would be able to start to develop without further consideration as well. So I think we just want to make sure they were treated the same as the other property owners.
Correct, and I might add to that comment, sir, that there was really no assumption or belief that UDOT would be doing anything different with the property. We just kind of had made the assumption that their established uses or reason for owning that property was closely associated with the Mountain View Corridor construction. So originally hadn't been included, but certainly the purpose for including them, as you stated, was valid and completely correct, or a good extension of the original logic for deciding who was in and who was out of that area.
And sir, it also appears to include some additional property owners to the south. Private
Yes, that's right. And we went through those last week. I can't remember who the individual property owners are, but yeah, the same sort of situation, that zoning.
So I guess my only comment is, I still have the same questions I had in the meeting last week. We haven't had any action in over a year on this. I don't really see a need for a moratorium where there hasn't been any movement. We've been working on the general plan for 2 years in this area, or the whole city. So I think we've had ample time to address it. So I just don't think that we actually really need to do this
Okay, thanks, ma'am. So there are some circumstances that are different right now that have been different in the past. First, as you can see on the map, the UDOT project is a major change to the face of the area there, both transportation and commercially wise. And the reason commercially is it changed the area is because one of the major property owners there that had one of the uses that's similar to a lot of ones up there in the area was both bought out and then deciding and looking at what were their options going to be in the future. That same landowner owned property both where UDOT bought their land and then also further to the east in various spots along 5600 West. Because of now that change in both actual use and potential use in the future, this is one of those points in time where you look at a question that has arisen in the past in the city, and that of course has happened probably 10 to 12 years ago once, and before that again, before my time, but it certainly has come to question. And periodically, things do change from a condition standpoint, so that's the immediate on the ground right there to the 40 to now 77 acres trigger, so to speak. The other changed condition is a more gradual one that occurs over time, and that is simply, as we all know, commercial and new commercial, changed commercial development has been creeping slowly north along that corridor for a number of years and is now pretty close to there. So conditions do change over time. This is a point in time where we're seeing a lot of that, and so we're proposing a moratorium so we can look closer at that.
A couple of comments and questions. With the moratorium, and let's say during that moratorium we decided that we did want to change the land use to a light manufacturing, the existing landowners would still be grandfathered in and their conditional uses would continue to be valid, correct?
That's correct. Barring any other change at all, anybody who already had a valid conditional use, a valid business license, for example, all those sorts of things would stay in place.
So the zoning wouldn't really affect them at all until they decided to sell their property.
Right.
And so then the second point to that is, if the zoning was to change to light manufacturing, would that, from heavy manufacturing it is now, would that potentially increase the land value for them?
Potentially, yes. The term down zoning was used there, and I know where that fear or at least question comes from as you look at development across the country, here locally, here in the state. But specific to that area and what's going on in the area currently, again, as I refer to the development, as it's crawling to the north, as transportation network is improving there, if you want to call it improvement, and allowing for more transport around the area, those land values could very easily increase.
Thank you.
Councilman Rush.
Just one point of clarification, I want to bring up this, and this is probably to Councilman Bueller's, is probably like, he listed two likely scenarios, but I think there's a third, even more likely scenario into Councilman Vincent's questions on this, is that I think we got to remember that there's a difference between the general plan and the zoning. Because in some ways, we determine our zoning with guidance and help from the general plan, but another likely scenario is that we say, hey, yes, we should plan this down the road for a different type of use that is not manufacturing, or include other uses, including manufacturing, but the zoning doesn't change until either the city or the landowner comes in and requests a change. And that is what happens with the majority. When we update our general plan in the coming weeks, that will be the majority. We won't do any zone changes. We will do all plan changes. And so, I would just say that we need to remember that, a zone change is completely different from, just a general plan change. And so with that, I've never heard anyone ever say, even people that disagree with the city's plan, that we shouldn't have a plan. And so, I'm in favor of, looking at new ideas and new things for this. There are things that we do in the city council that are the start of things, and there are things that we do that are the end of things. Like we'll vote on an easement for a construction project next, and that's pretty much the end of work with it. Starting a study and looking at this is really the beginning of something. And so I think that we're all in favor of having more information and looking at something and being thoughtful and deliberative and not send people down a road or to have a false expectation and get to a point in time to where there is some different things. And like I said, I think, when the plan comes back, we might have disagreements. The property owners might have disagreements with the plan, but I think we at least need to study it first. And so looking forward to having that go and go in a quick and timely fashion as possible.
Councilman Hume.
Thank you, Mayor. I just curious about that map right there. Inside of broken lines, we see the blue color is a majority in that inside of broken lines there, and also even outside too. So is as we hear anything about UDOT gonna buy the rest of the big property there, or what their intention or want to do in that area?
UDOT does, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
UDOT doesn't intend to acquire any more. My understanding is they have acquired everything they need to for their project. And as far as future development plans, they don't have any development plans that we're aware of right now either. Anything that they hold right now and any plan that they currently have is associated with building Mountain View Corridor.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, to that question though, UDOT has never been a developer
No.
of sorts with plans of anything. They just acquire property for roads.
Right. So once the Mountain View Corridor project is finished, it is possible, and UDOT does do this from time to time, that they will dispose of that property from a surplus standpoint, which then would be available for development, but no, development is not their business.
If you could clarify, Mr. Pyle, what is the difference to the property owner between now, the way things are, and if the moratorium is in place? What does it stop anyone from doing? One would be requesting a zoning change.
That's correct.
Second, they still use, well, I would say they still use their property, still own it, run their business. And if they have approval to do anything different already in place, that doesn't affect that. So could they, what does it stop us from, or stop them from doing by having the moratorium versus just the way it is now?
So you mentioned one, no zone changes. You also could not change a business use that would require a conditional use change, something like that.
I mean, like if currently it's a salvage yard and they wanted to put in something else, change their business.
Correct. And there are all, well, I shouldn't say this because my memory or knowledge of the particular zoning code isn't that minute, but most of the uses that are over there now are conditional uses. So it makes an extension. The logical extension is there probably won't be any change in terms of new or different types of businesses coming into that area under that scenario for that time period.
Okay.
Could I make a
So,
comment?
the difference there is fairly minor. It just means that if they were planning on changing their business to something else, this moratorium would prevent that.
I think that is correct. Is that correct in all cases, Nicole?
Well, correct in any case that would require a new or amended conditional use. It also would limit any subdivision application as well.
Yeah, that was one I didn't remember. Now, your earlier comment, Mayor, though, was also correct in that you said you'd still be able to sell your land. You'd also be able to sell your land under the conditional use or the approval that it has in place, which you also said, but just to clarify or add to it.
Okay.
Are there any other exclusions you can think of, Nicole?
That they wouldn't be allowed to change during this time period?
Yeah.
No, that's correct. Rezones, conditional use changes, subdivision applications, those applications are held in abeyance until the moratorium is lifted.
Yep, okay, thank you.
All right, now I know that there are individuals in the audience who would like to comment. That's why we have the public comment. Now, You may think this might not be totally fair, but in order to preserve the same rules for everyone who comes to council meeting, we have a time for public comment, we have a time for council discussion. And it's put in place not for events like this, but rather when things get really heated and people get angry. But if we allow it for a nice situation, then we have to allow it for all. And so we have to remain consistent on that in order that everyone is treated the same. So, but you're certainly welcome to stay after the meeting
Well,
and
you
ask
know,
questions.
if he spoke
So,
the truth,
and I'm
that would
sorry,
be, if he spoke the truth, that he lied.
I'm sorry if you will be disruptive.
Let's go.
That's why we
No,
have that
I'm
rule
leaving
in
because, you
place.
know, I said my say that he lied. I want that on the record.
Fortunately, that is not on our record since
Fine, fine. Everybody
it's,
else heard it. Come on.
that's why the rule's in place. Unfortunately, in our society, and I'm going to take leave of the council, I'm sorry, I've got to make a couple of comments. Civil discourse is not always possible. In order to maintain civil discourse, and it breaks down sometimes, you've probably heard of other cities where it has, but you must maintain civil discourse to respect everyone and their rights. So we set up these rules not to discourage comment, but to allow a process that works for everyone to have equal say and to be treated the same. I wish it weren't that way. I wish everyone in our society were civil and it worked. But you can't choose when you want to enforce a process or not. Because when you start doing that, that's when you start playing favorites and you start treating your residents of your city unequally. And so we looked for a process. They did it long before I got here and put it in place to allow people to comment. And we're all available outside of this meeting. We're all available to have those discussions. You're welcome to visit with us afterwards as well. But there's a reason. And so we want to respect all of our citizens equally, and that's the process we've set up to do that. If that's the wrong process, you're welcome to call us and say it's wrong, and we'll look at changing it or see if there's a better way. But it seems to have worked over a period of a number of years. Actually, quite a few years before I got here. I don't know how long we've had the process. There's two of us that I can claim are junior members of the council because we've only been here 2 years. And I'm probably more the junior because I had to unlearn a lot of things when I came here, having been in another branch of government, or part of government, and it was difficult to make the transition. I had to unlearn a lot of, could I call them bad habits? So, anyway, so much for that. With that, we're still discussing the issue, and see if there are any comments, or Councilman Vincent.
Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance 1537.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. You've got those. Okay. And for a number of you, if you weren't here, we did discuss this last week as well in our previous study meeting on that. So, the second.
Add additional property.
Okay.
Please.
We have a motion and a second before us to approve ordinance 15-37 as it is currently written and as it shows on the map, the first map, not this one. And I understand that's what your motion is. That is the motion before us. Any further discussion?
And I would accept an amendment to that motion if they wanted to talk about additional property.
Well, if it's going to be amended, someone has to speak up.
I would move to amend the ordinance to encompass the expanded area shown in the alternative map.
We have a motion to amend, and I believe that needs a second as well.
Second.
Okay. So now that motion is properly
Now we
before.
have two pending motions.
Well, we deal with the motion.
Secondary motion. Secondary motion.
Yeah, we deal with the motion before us first. That is the motion to amend. And depending upon what happens with that one, then we go back to the underlying motion. Any discussion to that? Seeing no discussion, then we will take a roll call vote on the amendment, which is to expand from the approximately 40 acres to approximately 70.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ling?
Yes.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Hune?
Aye.
Councilman Rushton?
Aye.
Councilman Norfelt?
Yes?
And Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. What we have before us now is an amended ordinance 15-37. And the motion is that we pass that motion as amended. I'd like to repeat it, and it's not just for all of you, to make sure that those listening in or watching as well are following that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll place it for a vote to our recorder.
Councilman Norfelt?
Yes.
Councilman Rushton?
Aye.
Councilman Hune?
Aye.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilwoman Ling?
No.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow?
Just struggling a moment, so. I will vote aye.
Motion passes by majority.
6 to 1. With that, then, that takes care of our ordinances. We now go to item number 9 on the agenda, Resolution 15-188. This is a very simple one. It is a right-of-way contract and a warranty deed and temporary construction easement. This is in conjunction with widening or the traffic signalization improvements occurring on 40th West and 41st South. And we've done a number of these before as there's affecting property owners right in that intersection and right of way. With that introduction to the council.
Mayor, I'll move for approval of Resolution 15-188.
Second?
The motion is properly before us. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll place it for a vote to our recorder.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ling?
Yes.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Hune?
Aye.
Councilman Rushton?
Aye.
Councilman Norfelt?
Yes?
And Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now, we do not have a need for an executive session tonight. And so, any last comments from the council?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.